Summer of the Mariposas, Chapter 10. The Heron. Standing on one leg, the heron watches and marvels at my twin. By the time we arrived at Teresa's house, towing the bleeding goat by a macata, an old rope, tied to a sailor's knot around its neck. The sun was completely out. I figured it was 8 or 9 in the morning. Already the heat blazed down on us with vengeance, and we were so dehydrated our tongues felt like thick, dry parchments in our mouths. We didn't have to call out. An old man with a sun-weathered straw hat and faded overalls unbent himself from his chores in the garden to nod our way as we walked up to him. We couldn't talk. We were so winded and fatigued from the long trek. Seeing our state, the old man walked over to a well, unhooked a tin pail, and dripped it carefully down into the water. "You looked drayed out," he said, as he pulled the pail back up by the cord and attached to the handle. "Come, have some water. This is the best well in all of Mexico. It's so cold and fresh, it could wake the dead." For a moment, I was weary of the old man and didn't take the cup of fresh water. Instead, I looked down the well and saw nothing but the dark river water flowing free, appetizingly, on its way to some unknown destination. With my sister standing a few feet away from us, looking scared but hopeful, I took the cup of water and sniffed it. It smelled like nothing and everything. It smelled like the freshness of spring and all the joy that it could bring. It smelled like a promise. Gingerly, I tasted it, letting the coolness of the water sit on my tongue while I decided if it was okay to let the girls have some. It tasted better than it smelled, and it tasted like summer, like fun, like innocent in the Rio Grande. So I swallowed, and the purity of it was divine. We drank greedily from the pail, not bothering to talk or even look up at the old man, who seemed to be enjoying the scenery while he waited for us to get our fill. That will do you," he said, dumping out the rest of the water into the cement trough attached to the well. The splash scared off a scorpion who'd been sunning himself in the morning light. "We are the Garaza girls. We're here to see Teresa," I said as I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. "This is her place?" "What took you so long?" he asked, waving the front door of the shack. "Come on in. She's been waiting for you for ages." Teresa was not who we expected. For starters, she didn't look like a woman. She looked like an old man dressed up like an old woman. There was just nothing feminine about her. Her floral printed cotton dress hung on a rail-thin body like a discarded flour sack. She looked like a praying mantis, bent over, sitting at her table, rubbing her hands together. When she waved at us, we saw that her hands were big and bony with huge knuckles. The tips of her fingers were blunt, squared off, and tapered like those of a working man. Her nose, too, was unusually masculine. It was big and swollen and riddled with crevices and white, scarred blemishes. It hung like a bulbous mushroom in front of her face. But that wasn't the worst of it. No, the worst of it was her small, naked head. Except for a few gray strands of hair, she was as bald as a baby pigeon, which gave her the appearance of being a very old man with enormous wide eyes. The only feminine thing about her was the huge pair of silver earrings, which hung low on her thin, elongated earlobes. They touched her shoulders. "Come here. Let me look at you closely. My eyes are not as good as they used to be. Thankful to these miserable cataracts, Teresa said. She's her skeletal fingers waving us in, urging us closer. As we neared the table, we saw what she meant. Her pupils were clouded over, opaque, and she seemed to not know exactly where we were standing in the room. Cecilia said, what Juanita said, pulling the bleeding goat to us. I know, Teresa said. A genuine smile lifted the side of her thin, shriveled mouth. We brought you this cabrito for your service, I said. Sí, gracias, Teresa said, taking the goat and untying the knot as at its throat. She plucked it up, stroked it, kissed it, and then let it go. The goat ran off and made her way out the door, bleeding happily the whole way. Sit down, sit down. I sat down on the only other chair at her table. Juanita scooted in beside me, and the rest of the girls huddled around us. You want to know how to get to your abuela's house, Teresa said, picking up an old deck of cards with unusual images on them. Latila, Peter cried exultingly. Oh, goody, can I play? Not quite, Teresa said, waving the cards in front of us before shuffling them expertly in her manly hands. These cards are more ancient than your Latila, more powerful. They will help you reach your destination, the home of your ancestors. Our car broke down, I said, being careful not to divulge too much information. I know, she said, leaning forward and looking over the deck spread before her. You're going to have to travel by foot the rest of the way. She picked up a card and almost pressed her globular nose to it to look at it closely. Then she did the same with 5 other cards before she straightened up and sighed. How much further is it? I asked. It's a difficult road you have taken, one riddled with hardship and painful ordeals. But then again, you are difficult children. She smiled as she said it, pointing her crooked index finger at us. Unfortunately, the road ahead is full of trials and tribulations. You have angered the witch, and now you must pay for your transgression. The doom of the worlds dragged me down, anchored me in misery at the knowledge that I could have avoided what was coming. Pay? Yes, Teresa said, looking at me closely now. But then again, you knew that already, didn't you? Knew what? Juanita asked, turning back and forth between me and Teresa, waiting for answers that we were both reluctant to disclose. Cecilia has called upon evil to plague you, Teresa proclaimed, putting her hands over 3 of the cards on the table for us. They are coming this way, the children of the night, traveling forth from the ancient world, coming from far and wide to avenge their mother. Cecilia has children? Velia asked, leaning down to look at the cards. But she said she didn't. Not children like you. Teresa turned the 3 cards on the table upside down and leaned over to get a better look. Adopted children, immortal children, crafted by the devil himself and loosed upon the earth to aid in the destruction. Cecilia is a crafty and skillful sorcerer. She has survived through the ages by cultivating that which lives and breathes in the darkness, part of our fearful minds. In her greed, her need for power, she has cultivated 3 of our greatest nightmares, nurturing their dark souls and sustaining their evil spirits by feeding them only malice and sin. In a way, she is more their mother than their own creator, and that is the problem. Your aggression and contempt has called upon her wrath, and now you must face that which she has beset upon you, the evil trinity. Delia put her hand on my shoulder to get my attention. And you know about this. Why didn't you warn us? Delia demanded, petrified in the seat by Teresa's horrible prediction. I could only blink away my fearful tears. I didn't know she was real, I finally admitted. I met Lillarilla at the river. She warned me about all this, but I was too skeptical to believe her. Wait a minute. Lillarilla is real? Juanita asked. Yes, but she's not evil. She actually tried to help us, I continued. I tried telling you about it, but you didn't believe me. So I dismissed her warning until this morning when you started taunting Cecilia, and I heard her curse us. I'm sorry, it's my fault. I should have told you everything from the start. I want to go home, Peter cried, reaching for Juanita, who took her in her arms and kissed her forehead like Mama smothers us. You can't run away from this, Teresa said, touching the cards and looking at the ceiling blindly. This time, you have to face your nightmares. Teresa was right. If only I'd warned my sisters of Lillarilla's caution to be humble and good, we wouldn't be in this mess. Now, it was up to me to contend with whatever evil I had brought upon us. I had to protect my Hermatis. Isn't there anything we can do to stop this? Lillarilla gave me this amulet, these earrings. She said I could use it 5 times, one for each of the orbits, but I've already used it 3 times. What Cecilia has bestowed upon you is just the beginning. You must save the ear pendant remaining gifts. Use them sensibly, for there is so much more to life than nightmares and demons in the dark. In order to go home, to be truly happy again, you must face your worst enemy of all, the monster that lives among you. But you'll need your magical gift to get there. So save your good fortune. Use it wisely. Can't you help us? I peered across the table to get a better look at what was coming after us. I can't stop them, Teresa said. It's not within my power. And I can do is perceive and forewarn. But there are other ways I can help you. I can see into your future and advise you, caution you, tell you how to divert that which dwells in the mystical realm. Those are things I am familiar with, things within my sight. Teresa went back to looking closely at the cards. I waited anxiously, signaling to my sisters to be quiet as she pondered. She pointed to a card, El Niago. Then she rested her fingertips on 2 other cards sitting close on the table. The cheetahs, lots of them. Which owls? Juanita cried out. Where? When? El Negro, I asked. What's that? Brujra, a devious warlock. You will meet him first, and he will not show himself as who he really is. He will come in disguise, asking for help. But don't be deceived by his helplessness. He is willingly and ruthless. At first, you won't know it's him. But once you discover his evil plot, you must sing and chant. Sing the song of the moon and the cave, and the song of the bird and the rain, and the song of your childhood. It will invoke the mother, and he will be much afraid. But we don't know this. We don't know the song. But we don't know the song of the cave, I said, looking around at my sisters for confirmation of our ignorance. Their faces were as confused as I'm sure mine looked. The lechitas will be more difficult to escape, she continued. They are evil, beyond compare. Their tongues are made of the fifth element, and their words are sharp metal talons that can cut through even the cleverest of men. To avert the paralyzing effect of their punishment, you must pray 7 Pejitanitas and 7 Ave Marias while you tie 7 perfectly spaced knots on a silk thread. Only then will you be able to escape the flame in their eyes. Flame in their eyes? Are you kidding? Juanita asked. The tongue of her voice told me she'd had enough of Teresa's riddles. I had already met Lilarola and listened to her cryptic message, so my own dismay was not as great as that of my sisters. Juanita, please, I whispered, pinching her arm under the table. Well, what does she mean by that? She asked, rubbing her arm absently. I mean, what kind of advice is this? Cave songs? Knots on a stupid string? Don't be rude. Juanita's lack of respect to the elderly Teresa embarrassed me. Teresa was only trying to help us get out of this mess unscathed. I thought, of course, given our experience with Cecilia, I wasn't sure I could believe anything Teresa had to say. So I kept my ears and eyes open for suspicious behavior from the old soothsayer. Even if Teresa had been under a spell and forced me to tell the truth, she was giving us answers we needed to pay attention to. But if we didn't understand them right now, no, it's all right, Teresa said. It's this girl's fire that will keep you safe as you face the last of the malevolent trinity, the wretched Capriagas. El Capriagas? Peter wailed, terrified. There is no such thing. I'm out of here, Juanita exclaimed, jumping out of the chair and heading for the gaping door. Believe me, child, Teresa's husband said, stepping out of the darkness that suddenly seemed to overcast the room. He stood in front of the door, impeding Juanita's progress. The Capriadas are very real. I saw it with my own 2 eyes, and I didn't have catarrhs. The twins had started for the door too, just like Juanita. They stopped to listen to Teresa's husband. Where? Delia asked, crossing her arms in front of her chest. When? Delia demanded, mimicking her sister. A few months ago, out there at the base of the Sierra. It was sucking the life out of one of my goats. It hissed at me, and when I came upon it, its prickly coarse hair stood up like a sharp razor along the length of its back. It snared and flew at me, the scrawny little thing, but I wasn't scared. I picked up my rifle and shot it. You killed it? Peter asked, sounding relieved. No, Teresa's husband said, looking at a little chagrined, yet firm as the same time. But I injured it, shot it through its left eye. Bullet went right into its head. It howled like a rabid dog. I've never seen anything like it before or since. That's the good news, Teresa said, leaning in to grip my hand with her claw-like fingers. It's been injured by human hands, so it will be very weary. But don't be fooled by its meekness. Its heart is pure evil. But it's no humanity left in him. But how? I started feeling completely overwhelmed by everything Teresa had said. Questions ran through my head. How would we recognize El Milagro? Juanita had pointed. But what was the song of the cave? It felt as if Teresa had given us more questions than answers. Don't show the Capriadas any mercy, Teresa's husband advised. Take the nearest tree branch and pound its head in. But what if it, Peter started to speak, but Ford devoured her voice And she didn't finish her sentence. It won't, Teresa assured us. It is all in the speed of the spread of the cards. You can save yourself, but only if you are brave and cunning and stick together through these nightmares. You must never falter in your faith. It is the only way you will make it alive to your mama's house. You were never meant to die on this way. There are too many demons yet to be faced, too many tears yet to be shed. I wasn't sure I heard Teresa right. She was trying to tell us that there were more demons waiting at home. If that was so, our journey was going to be longer and more worrisome than I'd ever been led to believe.